Great to be joined again here on Flow by the member for Wannon, Dan Tehan. Dan, how are you travelling around this budget period heading back to Canberra?
Yeah, no, travelling well, Ricky, although we've already had some very disappointing news. Albanese Labor government has cut $250 million from the Building Better Regions Fund, which used to go to regional and rural communities to help with local community projects. So that was very disappointing news to arrive to in Canberra this week.
And they indicated that this was because of concerns about what they call rorting by the former National Party, some deal in relation to the coalition agreement, and claim there's new funds that are going to replace them. But will they actually replace what we've had with the Building Better Regions Fund?
Well, all the applications that went into round 6, the $250 million round, have all been torn up. So all the time, effort and cost that those community groups put into those applications, all for naught. And sadly, we know no new detail about these new funds. It won't be as much money in these funds as the $250 million. It'll probably be a 12-month delay while people have to reapply, they're assessed. And there was no rorting. These were just very good community projects. Everyone knows and has seen them in the electorate of Wannon. They were much needed projects, and to call it rorting shows they have no idea about regional and rural Australia. And to make things worse, Katie Gallagher, the finance minister who made this decision to get rid of the $250 million, announced today $750,000 for her own pet project in Canberra at the University of Canberra, a new sporting hub study. So it just goes to show you the hypocrisy under which Labor have acted.
Well, the Albanese government seems to have plenty of money to throw at Victoria, but it might go more to metropolitan areas, like $2 billion for the suburban rail loop.
That's it, $2.2 billion for the suburban rail loop. And to give you a sense, by doing that, they have now committed to a $75 billion spend, because the suburban rail loop is going to cost $150 billion. Meanwhile, regional and rural Australia and the road infrastructure network has been smashed by the wet weather, by the storms, by the flooding, and zilch for that. So $2.2 billion for Dan Andrews' pet project. Nothing for our road network, which, as everyone knows, has faced underfunding from the state government for years, has been now smashed by the wet weather and by the flooding, and nothing.
Now, there were projections earlier this week when you speak of local roads, local communities affected by flooding, projections of around 150 mils might fall around sort of Colac, Apollo Bay. How did we go with the weather in the local area?
Well, it's obviously been a very difficult time for everyone. We've seen potholes, we've seen landslips, we've seen localised flooding, and in particular we've seen the road network once again severely damaged by all this wet weather. The local communities have done an outstanding job, headed by the SES, the CFA, the local shires. But what we need to see is Dan Andrews and Anthony Albanese stump up, as they should, to help us now begin the repair job after all this wet weather.
Well, it seems odd they've got this policy they took to the election called a National Reconstruction Fund, which was more about manufacturing, but now they've got this $15 billion reconstruction fund, but there's actual physical reconstruction needs in the nation, such as in your electorate.
Absolutely, and so the money's there. We've already seen that, because they could stump up $2.2 billion for Dan Andrews' pet project, but it seems it's too hard for them to find it to put it into much-needed infrastructure repair in our area. And it sadly shows already the focus of this Labor government. The focus is on Canberra, on the public servants, on growing the size of government, on taxing more, but providing nothing for regional and rural Australia.
But I believe you've also got a concern that they've got to focus on the Victorian state election next month. The appearance by Minister Giles, you claim, is a little bit politically charged.
Absolutely. He's found time to go to 2 fundraisers for the Victorian state government as the headline of those fundraisers. Meanwhile, our small businesses are dealing with workforce shortages. They want the visas processed quickly in Canberra at the Immigration Department, rather than going in there and seeing what's going wrong with the visa processing. Here he is moonlighting for the Andrews Labor government, raising money for them and their re-election. It shows that he's focused on doing favours rather than the integrity of the immigration system and making sure the immigration system is working properly.
And I guess on that system working properly front, I have noted some commentary from the opposition about the Jihadi Brides coming back into Australia. Just what is the concern from the opposition in this area?
Well, we've heard nothing from the government as to how they're going to keep Australians safe when they bring these Jihadi Brides back. We don't know the cost. They'll have to have control orders placed on them. We don't know whether they'll be arrested for having broken the law. And we don't know when they're coming back. The government will tell us nothing about it. They're trying to bring them back in under the cover of darkness. We're hearing it'll be Melbourne Cup or the budget or some other event that they'll try and quietly bring them back home. They don't want to tell the Australian people what they're doing. This will make Australia a lot less safe than what we have been for the last 9 years with our strict border controls. And Anthony Albanese and the Labor government are trying to do this all under the cover of darkness.
Just lastly, you were the former Trade Minister and did actually work with Liz Truss as the former British PM, but there was a glowing endorsement from the current Shadow Minister, Kevin Hogan, of your work in getting the UK and India trade deals over the line, but looks like the clock might run out on sitting days to get them concluded before the end of this year, so another 12-month wait for farmers.
It's a great shame because what we miss out on is cuts to tariffs which make it cheaper for us to be able to sell our goods over into the India and the UK market. So once again, we call on the Anthony Albanese Labor government to actually focus on the things that really matter to the Australian people, like these free trade agreements, get them through the parliament so our farmers can benefit from them, because if they don't get through this year, that's 12 months of tariff cuts that our farmers miss out on.
Well, Dan Tehan reporting in from Canberra. We look forward to the opposition's scrutiny of the budget in coming weeks. Thanks for joining us today on Flow.
Thanks, Ricky.